Want to go, pretty boy?
Two minutes by yourself and you feel shame, and then you get free.
The only thing better than a glass of beer is tea with Miss McGill.
And welcome to the Fourth Line Voice Podcast. My name is Darren. Thank you very much for tuning in. Episode 434 of The Big Show, some enforcer-based podcasting coming at you, brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network. How's everybody doing out there? Oh, it's another Sunday. Cold Sunday up here in Saskatchewan. Minus 39 out right now. We had snow all weekend, so spent the morning here shoveling and snow blowing. And yes, like winter in Saskatchewan. Oh, we're almost there. Getting through it, folks. But I have Vegas in 2 weeks, so I'll be gone for 10 days. So I'll be back to shorts and flip-flops. I'll be loving it. And then, you come back, it's March. March can always be, the minus 40s are kind of done. But, you always there'll be a good blizzard at some point in March. But other than that, you get to April and spring is sprung, so to say. And, I can't wait because I am not a fan of winter. But I'm a fan of my guest today. Yes, thankfully you guys won't have to listen to me ramble on for an hour and a half as we do around here. No, today I have a special guest. Jason Kostadine joins the show, and Jason played 3 years of Major Junior in the Quebec League, and then went on to play 9 years of pro hockey in the East Coast League, Central League, the new IHL, and he tells us all about it. A lot of fights, and we talk about teammates and some opponents and everything else. So Jason was a great guest, and I want to thank him again for taking the time out. I think we ended up talking for about an hour 45. So I want to thank him for taking the time out of his day to come on the show. I greatly appreciate it. And but before we get into that, obviously I have to talk about, we have to do some housekeeping, right? As I said, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. Over 100 shows in the network. I'm on the original content creator side. Myself, old Terry Ryan, TR, and of course, Joe Lazito is back in business. Part 2 with Jack Gregg. I highly recommend you check that. Jack's got great stories, great storyteller. Highly recommend that you check that out. Also, check out Joe's back catalog. Asham, Strudwick, Fakota. You hear me every week go on and on about it, but definitely check it out. You're not going to get Let's try that again. You will not get a more thorough interview than a Joe Lazito interview. Let me tell you. Yeah, it's almost like Joe's just rummaging through your pockets or something like that. I don't know, but I don't know where I was going with that. I started it and then I completely lost the bit. There we are, Sunday afternoon. Yeah. But also, my other podcast, The Bruised and Battered Show, that I do with my, the Three Stooges. It's myself, Alec, and Jay, and it's a look at current minor league hockey. And this episode that we have out, we have an interview with Orlando Solar's Kelly Bent. And so get bent. Check it out. And tremendous guest. And we've 14 episodes in. It's been fun growing a new show. It's actually been really well received and actually growing a little quicker than I thought. Really getting a lot of positive feedback from players, and which is always a good thing. I mean, that's what you always strive for, to have credibility with the players. But just minor league fans, I mean, they're passionate and everything, and we cover the Federal, East Coast, American League, LNAH, Southern Pro, and and I got to say, the minors, I mean, especially the East Coast League, has been real hot this year. A lot of good fights in the East Coast League. If you're on Instagram, check out Coast Battles and the Hockey Fight League. Those guys are always on top of the fights. And Bruised and Battered also on our socials, Instagram, Facebook. Check it out. Alec has done a great job with the social media, and he's been we get a lot of fan submissions from video. They're at the game and they film it and send it to Alec right away, and he puts it up. So it's a real cool perspective from that sense in terms of the angle and stuff, because especially with the East Coast League being with the copyright and all that horse shit. So it's been great that the fans have been sending us footage. So but definitely check out the Bruised and Battered show. If it's a look at, I mean, it's been a change for myself, as anybody, any listener of this show knows that I'm not a fan of current hockey, and nor do I watch. But doing this show is sort of, kind of forced me to pay attention. But I have to, again, I'm not sitting down watching games every night from all different leagues, but paying attention to the transactions and some fights. And I got people kind of sending me, oh, you better check this one out, and and the fights, I can't yell at the clouds forever. The fight's been real solid this year. Cade McNally, there you go. He got another good one last night. I've been, his return to hockey and his first steps in pro there with the Tulsa Oilers have been really positive. He's had some really good fights so far and played solid. So really happy for him. Of course, he's been a guest on the show a few times. And, Amesbury cruising along. Yannick Turcotte throwing down. I mean, he's looked really good. I mean, folks, forget the NHL. There ain't nothing happening there. Minors is where it's at, man. East Coast League, I'm telling you. And but yeah, Bruised and Battered. I hope you guys check it out. And not only with this one, but please check out my social media. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Same with Bruised and Battered and my show, Fourth Line Voice, as well as my YouTube channel, Fourth Line Voice. I have over 2,000 videos on there. Just actually uploaded the latest. Justin Portillo drops a cat in the Federal League the other night. That's up on my channel. But I have over 2,000 videos, all different leagues, going back 70, old 80s WHL Cooper all days. Check it all out. Get some old Bomber Prince Albert footage. I think you guys will dig the channel. So please subscribe to the channel and go down the rabbit hole. It'll keep you busy for hours. But other than that, folks, I mean, Super Bowl's around the corner. Who's going to, you know what? I think Philly's going to do it this year. I think I'm putting my money on the Eagles, I think. So we'll see. But yeah, I think, no team's done it three times or three in a row. So I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, Kansas City has a way, right? So, but I know I'm going to side with Searson here. He's fly, Eagles fly, right? So let's see what happens. But, here we go. I think I'm putting the money on the Eagles. Check out DraftKings. Use the promo code THPN. Get a $200 bonus when you sign up. I mean, I know it's ads and whatever, but I'm just saying hey, if you're gonna bet, it's free money. I'm just, especially these days, and it helps the network out, and it helps me out, and it helps you out. Everyone and like I said, you're betting anyway, so why not? But got to do that, and we'll get into it with my guest Jason Kostadine. I want to again thank you, Jason, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoy it, and if you enjoy it, hey, tell a friend. As I always say, you guys are my billboards out there. I post it up, but if you could tell, hey, you should check out this Fourth Line Voice guy. He's got good guests. The show's pretty good. I would appreciate it. Rate and review the show. Download, don't stream. That's how we get paid. But all that fun stuff. Check out the Bruised and Battered show. And there we go. Okay, I'm going to shut up and get out of here. Probably have to go shovel again. So here is my interview with Jason Kostadine. Please enjoy. And thanks, everybody. Have a good day. All right, welcome to the Fourth Line Voice. I have a special guest today, none other than Jason Kostadine. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on. And like I was telling you before, we off air here, and like we like to do it around here, we'll timeline your whole career, and from junior all the way. Well, actually, probably before that, from junior all the way to pro. But I guess we'll start at the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and where did you play your minor hockey?
Okay, born and raised in St. Louis, so that's where I played my minor hockey. It's funny, St. Louis now has a reputation for producing really quality hockey players and producing quality teams. And back in, I don't know, let's say the 90s, when I grew up and was playing, it was far from that. So it was the grassroots level, a very niche sport, and grew up in South St. Louis, a very, it wasn't the hood, but it was a gritty neighborhood, and just grew up and fell in love with the game through the Blues, and really through Brett Hall in particular.
Well, yeah, that was that heyday, man, when he was just sniping too, right? So
Brett Hall was the best. He was like a rock star, an athlete. He had personality, and he just took hold of that time when he was scoring like 80 goals, 70 goals, 50, 60 goals a year. He took hold of the city and got, I mean, myself, but I think a lot of other kids interested in hockey in St. Louis.
yeah, it's actually sort of the irony. Actually, I'm up here, obviously in Saskatoon, in Saskatchewan, and last night at the Kinsman dinner that they do every year.
Yeah.
Guess who was the keynote speaker? We had Al McGinnis, Brett Hall, Chris Pronger, Kelly Chase, and Tony Twist were all in town to do the Kinsman dinner last night.
That's a studded lineup.
Yeah, well, Joey Koser was here too. They called it Beauty and the Beast. And yeah, so that's funny that you're talking about Brett Hall and everything, and he was actually here yesterday in Saskatoon. So, but while speaking of,
best.
well, like you said,
yeah, I love Brett Hall.
Well, you're a fan of Brett Hall and everything else, but of course, on those teams, of course, was, like I said, Kelly Chase and Tony Twist, and who, of course, being from Saskatoon here, they played for our junior team, the Saskatoon Blades, and they were Twister's a hero in St. Louis, so is Chase, I know that for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I know Chase was before Twist. So I really like the Kelly Chase era, and who was the other guy they had? Darren Kimball, Todd Ewan. Those were kind of Twist was maybe a couple of years after those guys, but that was kind of the era of the old arena in St. Louis where it was really cool and where I really kind of fell in love with the game and became enamored with the Blues and everything.
Well, like you said, you grew up in St. Louis, played in minor hockey, and I know. Former guest of the show, and of course he went on to play for the Blues and everything else, and I know from St. Louis that he's been on this show before, and he's a character. Cam Janssens, I'm sure your paths crossed a few times. Yeah,
it was funny because Cam was in 84, so I was in 83, so we had a lot of crossover, and it ended up there were, I think, 4 or 5 of us drafted in the 02 draft. Cam was one of them. And seeing this kid from like a peewee and obviously growing up to being a legit NHL heavyweight was incredible to see.
Well, and it's interesting because, you weren't afraid. Yeah, that's why we have you on the show here. But you weren't afraid. You weren't afraid to drop the gloves and put up a few pims yourself. When did you develop that part of your game? Like, when did the physical side come? And I've heard some stories about old Jason Kostadine on this show, and you like to get kind of a Sean Avery vibe to you, Barnaby vibe a little bit, get yapping and get fighting and get annoying. When did that all start take part in your game?
I don't know. I mean, the playing hard and the being hard to play against, that's always like been my MO. Like I've always prided myself on just being a really hard worker above all else. So when I'm on the ice, when I'm in practice, it was being the hardest worker. And with being a hard worker and being physical and being tough to play against comes, getting in fights. So that kind of came naturally with the way I play the game. It wasn't maybe anything I set out to naturally do to fight. It just happened, and I honed in on that.
Well, you honed into it enough to be at 16 years old. You're leaving Missouri, and you're heading up to Canada, to Quebec of all places, and playing for the Hull Olympic. How did you end up playing in the Quebec? Why the Quebec Junior League? How did you end up there? And how did that whole trip go?
So, in St. Louis, you play midget AAA, or you play Junior B. Yep. And if you play Junior B, your hopes are to play Junior A and then to go to college. And I wanted to do the AAA route to see if I could play junior hockey in Canada. I was always enamored by major junior in Canada for some reason. We used to go to like Windsor Spitfires games, OHL games when we were up in tournaments as a kid. So I was always enamored. And midget AAA, I had a really, really good year. Some people may find it hard to believe, but I put up a lot of points. I mean, I got 30 goals, 50 points, and I got scouted at the last tournament we were in by the Hall Olympics and Charlie Henry. And if you know anything about, major junior hockey in Canada, Hall is legit one of the premier organizations. Like when you think of the Western Hockey League, you think of Red Deer and Kelowna, those kind of places. And in the Quebec League, it's Hall, Quebec City, Halifax. So that kind of sold me right there.
Oh, yeah, so absolutely. And it's, you're, like you said, you scouted, you head up to Hall at 16, played major junior. I said, did you have like a whole young blood vibe? Like, oh, here comes the American coming up to play our game at 16. Did you, how were you welcomed, and how was camp for you at 16?
It was, sidebar, I love the movie Youngblood. My dad got me a VHS tape of that when I was young, and I countless hours watching Youngblood.
Yeah, that's why it's the theme music. That's why it's the intro to this podcast. I love Youngblood too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, love Youngblood, and honestly, that probably sparked the interest in major junior hockey in Canada. But it was eye opening. It was eye opening because I didn't have any. And you know what? Another guy from St. Louis, Cam, we didn't have any, people to look up to, or there wasn't any blueprint. Like, we were the first ones to do it. So just the culture and all the other things that weren't hockey I can get used to, but hockey was the biggest adjustment, just how good it was compared to midget hockey in St. Louis. And it was eye-opening how dialed that league was, coming from St. Louis, being a first-time kid doing it.
Well, and then the other thing is, not only are you coming up there, but like you said, with the culture shock, I mean, you're going to Quebec, into Hall, so now you still you're in high school, and it's French. Yeah. Like, did you know any? Well, I'm assuming you didn't know any French before you got there.
I mean, I took 2 years in high school, but I knew how to say, hi, my name is, I'm cold, and I could give you a bunch of, nouns. Like, I knew how to say chair and stuff, but to speak, I had no clue. So they were speaking really a whole different language to me. That was really tough, living with a billet family. It was just eye-opening, and it was a shock, and it made me grow up, so fast, and it gave me accountability. And that organization it's run so well, and it's had so much success for apparent obvious reasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, at that point, like you said, you're there, and it's especially, like I said, it'd be one thing, if you came up, and you're playing for Windsor, you come up and you're playing for Regina or something. It's like, it's the same, right? It's English and whatever. Going into, and then deep into Quebec too, it's like, it's one thing when you're in Quebec City or Montreal, the English will work with you a little bit, but I mean, you're deep into it, and at 16, and like you said, you're up there on your own, right, from St. Louis. It's got to be man, I can't, did you get homesick at all, or were you dead fast, like, I'm sticking this out?
I mean, one of my driving motivators for trying to succeed and trying to, have a good career at that time was like, I didn't want to seem like a failure, and I didn't want to come back to St. Louis and play Junior A or play in the USHL after having get released or cut or not make the team or be there a month and they say, you're not what we thought. So that was my biggest motivator. But I was so naive to the whole game. Like, I remember, I think it was like our first preseason game in Hall, and they had the team. They would have chiropractors and massage therapists and people to stretch you before the games. And I didn't know what they were, like, because I'd never seen that in midget hockey, obviously. And I asked one of the older guys on the team, I'm like, hey, the massage people, how much do they cost? I only got like $30. Can I get like half a massage from one of these people? And the guy's like, no, man, they're free. They're for us. That's what they're here for. I'm like, I could go up to any of them at any time before the game and get a free massage. Like, oh yeah, every game. So that was just one example where it was just like, I didn't know, because there was no, I hate to sound like I was in the Stone Age, but there was no YouTube really back then, and there was no internet to really know what you were getting into.
Yeah.
It was just, there was a lot more unknown than there would be today going in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know what you're saying. I'm older than you are, so yeah, no, I know completely what's going on. But here we go. Your first season, you roll in, you play 53 games, 10 points, 103 penalty minutes. So I mean, you're playing, you're involved. Your leading scorer on the team, he turned out not to have a bad NHL career. Alice Hemsky. Yeah. How was it like sitting with a 17-year-old Alice and he's from the Czech Republic, so he's in a foreign land too. What was it like seeing his skill level?
He was unbelievable. Like, just still to this day, the best player I ever played with. And I remember, it's funny, I remember seeing him the first time at training camp, and he didn't participate in training camp for some reason. I don't know if he thought it was optional or what, but he didn't participate. And he looked like just a regular kid that you'd find at a skate park, like just very regular looking, but he would get on the ice and he was so good and he was so talented and just a natural talent with his hands. And it was incredible to watch him for 2 years.
Well, and of course, like we said, coming to major junior, especially at that time period, it's a crazy scene in all junior hockey, at major junior at that level. A lot of fighting and a lot of penalty minutes. And you had a couple cats that had 300 minutes. I got to throw a couple names at you: Roberto Bissonette and Mario Jolly.
I'll go. Mario was a good guy. I mean, he was big, like just the prototypical. Like I think he was like 6'3", running 230 maybe. Prototypical, like super tough D, super tough. I mean, a heavyweight in the league. And then Bissonette, I mean, it's horrible how, he passed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, horrible how he passed, but he was such a character, and he was so cool. Like, the kind of guy that would have the guitar at the end of the night, like, so wild, so much respect from all the kids, and, like, I mean, I say this with all due respect, but he had a screw loose and he had a presence on the ice, and you didn't fuck around when Roberto Bissonette was on the ice, because you never know what he would do. He could fight you, or he, sucker punch your goalie right in the face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he actually had that year, a strong year that year. He had 31 goals, 381 minutes. So something was going on every time he hopped the boards.
Well, go to the net with your stick on the ice with Alice as your line mate. You're going to get 50.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You had 8.
He made that other guy too had a career year with him, and it was incredible to see their numbers. But they were good players before Alice, but after they played on his line, their numbers.
Oh, what was it, Bruno Lemire or whatever?
Yeah, Bruno Lemire, but he was a really good player too. Little, I don't know, maybe 5'6" on a good day. Little captain. He had a career year, and he was so good with Alice.
Well, you had 8 tilts that year. I know your first fight, the regular season, October 5th, against Alex Blackburn of Shawinigan.
I do remember Alex Blackburn. Yes. I don't think Alex Blackburn spoke 3 words of English, but we always fought over the years. He was I remember fighting him. Yeah, he was it was always like an even fight. We were just kind of the same height. He was a big, tough D-man who I usually fought. Yeah, he was tough.
As the season went on, I always like to ask the guys this when they're fighting. It's like, at any point, when did it start becoming like easier for you? Because at this point, I mean, your first couple times you drop the gloves, it's like taking the helmets off, half visors. We're getting away from cages now. Right. Now you're wearing half visors, and it's like a serious deal now. When did it start to kind of become, the heart rate slows down a little bit? You're kind of thinking about, instead of just, because most guys the first few times it's like and it's like the spazzing and you black out almost, right?
Yeah. I know what you mean. Just to have some poise when you're fighting, as opposed to, wildly flailing your arms. Honestly, for me, it was probably just, it sounds weird, the first time getting the shit kicked out of me. The first time getting beat up a couple times. Yeah. Like, you realize, like, if this is the worst, that I got through that, it can't be any worse than, that fight or something like that. And then that just relaxes you and almost gives you a sense of confidence that it can't be any worse. Or at least that's the way I looked at it. Like, it's only going to get easier. I thought, I'm only going to get better and better and more skilled and more, technically savvy and know what to do as I continue to fight.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, we'll keep going so that, the next season, you're back in Hall the next season, and this is a big year for you, right? Because the draft year and everything else, and you play 70 games, 13 points, but 295 minutes, and 18 fights. Was that sort of a conscious decision on your part? Like, okay, I'm going to fight more this year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I knew it was my draft year, and I knew I had a chance, I guess, like anybody playing major junior hockey, you have a chance. But I thought if I could add that to my game, along with being very physical, being a decent skater, being responsible on the ice, I thought if I could be a fighter and someone that could, maybe not put a huge amount of fear into the other team, but keep them honest, I thought that was going to better myself and my chances of, getting drafted.
Yeah. Well,
because I realized I didn't have maybe the skill level to not fight. So I couldn't bring my skill level in my overall game because it wasn't good enough without the fighting, I thought.
Now, at that point, like, did you do any, because MMA really wasn't kind of a thing then, but, like, did you do any boxing or anything to get ready for it? Like, did you, like, focus in, like, okay, I'm going to take some boxing and, like, really kind of get into this? Or was it just like, wow, let's go. Let's see what happens?
I did a little, but, like, a lot of boxing, if guys do boxing, it's great when they're throwing punches, but the footwork and that stuff and slipping punches that boxing entails, like, that doesn't really relate or cross over to hockey. So I would, I think we had a bag in our basement, and I would wrap like a rope around it and just hold on to the rope with one hand and throw with the other, and obviously switch hands a little bit. But that I felt was the most transferable, as opposed to kind of, having a guy hold mitts. Yeah. Where, because hockey, you're always holding on. There's never a time where one hand doesn't have hold of a jersey, a strap or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
but I didn't want to use all my energy and my training towards fighting, but I worked it in there, but nothing like, I'm not in there an hour a day, boxing or hitting a heavy bag.
Well, another guy that joined your team that year that went on to have an excellent NHL career is Maxim Talbot.
Yeah. I think we traded for Max. My first year, I think we traded for Max at the end of the year, and then the second year I was in Hall, he was there the full year.
Yeah.
It's funny because, like, you didn't really see it the first year, but that second year, that I was with Max, and then the year I played against him, you can just tell he was going to be special. He was like, his defensive game. He was a lot more offensive in juniors, but he had it. And, you know, he had that, like, it factor, that hard-working defense, grinding, skilled leader. He had a lot of those qualities in junior. So when I saw him, like, continue to have this success in the NHL level, I wasn't really surprised because I saw it when he was young that's what he was going to become. That's what he could become.
Yeah. Another guy I got to ask you about, I was checking it out. Good old from Nova Scotia. Do you remember Scott Gibson?
I do remember Scott Gibson. I lived with Scott Gibson for a little bit.
There you go.
In Hull. Scott Gibson was a very nice kid. I haven't spoken to him since after Hall, but he was a good dude. I had positive memories of Scott.
I had to throw out Scott Gibson because I believe it's his brother, somebody or his friend. Like last month, somebody got a hold of me and they're like, "You need to get Scott Gibson on your show. He's my brother, and he had all these penalty minutes." So when I was doing your research for your, I looked down. I'm like, "Oh, Scott Gibson." There you go. So there you go. I'm gonna give a shout out to Scott Gibson in Dartmouth. Yes, I'll definitely get you on the show. Yeah. I want to talk about your 300 minutes in the Alberta Junior League.
Gibson. Hope you're well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now, obviously this is a fight podcast and stuff. So we got to get down to it here because the Quebec League at this point, it's a gong show. And if just looking at the leaderboard now, folks, listen to me here. It is 01-02 league leaders. So you got two guys with 500 minutes in penalties, and you have two guys with 400 minutes in penalties on this list. I'm going to ask you about them because you fought them. First guy in Cape Breton with 596 penalty minutes that season was Pascal Morency.
I don't know Pascal off the ice. I mean, but he was like going for the record. I didn't get that. Like he would fight, which is fine, but then like if you fought, Quebec counts 10, so maybe those numbers are a touch inflated. But he would like throw an elbow pad off or like tell the ref to F off on the way to the box so he got another 10. Like it was so weird. He was like trying to go for this record, like not the fight record. Maybe the fight record I can see because that's kind of cool. You have the most fights, but the most penalty minutes, like that seems like you're putting your team shorthanded and spending a lot of time in the box when you'd probably rather be on the ice.
Yeah, well, yeah. Of course, he went on and had a big pro year.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, he could play. Like he wasn't a slug. Like
no.
I saw him play. Like he could handle the puck. He could skate. He could make plays. Like the fact that he was purposely trying to go for the record was, a little head scratching.
Well, another cat that you fought a few times, and of course he had just a measly 509 penalty minutes that season, and he actually played on two teams as well. Was Hunter Lahesh?
Oh boy, yeah, he was a real deal. He was scary. He was really scary. I remember like he was one of the heavyweights in the league at that time. Him and Trevor Ettinger.
Yep.
That name.
Yep.
So Hunter Lahash and Trevor Ettinger, those were like the super scary dudes at that time.
Well, and then the guy who was third in the league with 432 minutes, who the next year would actually set the Quebec League record with 653, was Marc-Andre Roy.
That's still the record today, right?
It is.
It's got to be.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Good for you, Marc-Andre. Yeah, he was tough too. Like super scary. Like he was. I think he had a mohawk. He was jacked. He wore like. I remember because both teams would kind of do running and stuff like that, and like jogging, kind of activation before the games. And he wouldn't even do it with the teams. He'd be in the corner like shadow boxing by himself. And I remember looking at it. I was like, oh boy. But he didn't play a lot, so that's kind of that made him a little less scary because he, when you're rolled out there 3 minutes a game, it's tough to be scary or put fear in people.
And then the final 400-minute guy that year, who actually went on and played a long time in the LNH, the old LNH folks out there will know this name, was Samuel Duplain.
Oh, yeah. Scary dude, too. Yeah. Who did he play? Yeah, Valdor or something like that, I think.
Well, I played in Shawinigan, Valdor, and then this year it was with the Quebec Ramparts that year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. He was one of the ones. And it will never happen, but, like, I think the leaders had, like, 30 fights. For sure, 30 fights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that will never happen. Like, those numbers. I don't think Crosby's scoring records might get broken more than those numbers, quicker than those numbers.
Well, yeah. Well, you can't even fight in the Quebec League anymore. If you fight, you're suspended. You're suspended. So it's like, So
that's a shame.
Yeah. Wow. It's like from one ridiculous to another, right? We're going at both ends of the spectrum here. I mean, I'm not saying we need guys getting 600 penalty minutes anymore, but I don't think we should be suspending guys for a fight in Major Junior either. So, that's. Can we find a happy medium here, folks? But
I would love to find out how much like extracurricular, abuse stars get, and how much things that could be eliminated if fighting were there. Yeah. But I don't see games. I can't really say anything about that.
No, but it'd be interesting for sure. Now, like when all this is,
a lot of people. I think a lot of those kids would probably play a little different if they knew they had consequences.
Oh, that's I mean I bitch on this show all the time that hockey is consequence free, and that's why you have kids acting like donkeys now because I can guarantee they wouldn't do that with Samuel Duplain sitting on the bench staring at you. So
I'm not a better, but I'd put a lot of money that'd be the case.
Yeah, you're not going to go in on an empty net and take a slap shot and start waving to the crowd with Trevor Ettinger behind you. That ain't going to happen. So,
yeah, you're not going to run their 50-goal guy either.
No,
you do that. Yeah, exactly. We're on the same page there.
Well, and I mean, it was funny earlier this week when you and I were going back and forth, and I mean, we'll get to Quebec in a second when we were talking about Tidball and stuff. Yeah. But with there was legit bench clearing brawls back then, and folks, they're on YouTube. Okay. We'll get into the bench clear that you and I were talking about, but But just in terms of like warming up and stuff, like you always see these guys, cruising center ice and.
Right.
Yap. And were you a big guy? Did you cruise the red line a lot, and mouth off, or were you sort of just whatever?
Nah, I mean maybe a little poke here or there, but I would stretch near the red line, but the whole like manning the red line. Let's be tough when the puck drops. I mean, the 20 minutes before the puck drops, I don't think that's the time to put that out there. I don't know. That never interested me.
But some guys get really into it. Like
some guys get. But I remember there was fines if you even like cross the red line with your skates. So I think that really nixed it. I mean, you could get a hair away, but if you crossed over, your team would get a fine. I think it could just be making that up.
Well, I know it was funny because they had so many problems in the 70s and 80s with like bench clearings in the Western League that I think maybe even to this day they don't even warm up together. The teams warmed up separately.
I think they warm up at the same time now, but I've heard that too in the Western League. They're like the visiting team went on for 15 minutes, they got off, then the home team for 15, then they scraped and then they played, which is wild.
Yeah. Well, as we said at the start of this year, this is a big year for you, and you end up getting drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks in the 8th round in the 2002 draft. Yeah. I mean, original 6 team. I mean, that's what an honor. How did you Did you have any sense that you were getting drafted, or were you surprised? Or take us through that day.
I think I was rated on one or two of those like central scouting lists, and I had an agent at the time, so he was kind of feeding me some information that I I wasn't under the impression that it would be like a top 3, top 4 round pick, but I knew I had a chance to be a pick, later. And I interviewed with Chicago, and the interview went really, really well. And I want to say our assistant coach in Hall, he had a connection with one of the scouts in Chicago, and they were friends, and the Chicago guy came to watch me a bunch. So yeah, I mean, original 6 team, and I loved Chicago growing up. That seems odd to say from a St. Louis kid, but Chicago was my team with Roenick and Belfour and that old Chicago stadium. So it was, I mean, a dream come true would be an understatement.
Well, absolutely. So you get drafted. I mean, obviously that fall you head to Blackhawk camp. I mean, Brian Sutter's the coach. Brian Berard's there. I mean, at this time, Chicago's not very good. I mean, in the standings or anything. But what was that just like to kind of go to that camp and be in that dressing room with like NHL guys and an NHL camp? Yeah. What's that feeling like?
I kind of wish I could go back and do it again, because I think the first you're only there as a young kid for let's say 10 days, but the first 3 days, I mean, you try not to be, and you try to go in there thinking they're your equals, but your jaw's a little bit on the floor. You're a little bit in awe. Like, I was collecting Alexei Zomnov hockey cards 5 years prior, and now I'm in a locker room with them. And I know I deserve to be there, but just I guess I could go back with hindsight and, that to go there and make the team and make the impression, as opposed to I'm kind of happy to be there type thing.
How did any of did you get it? Like, how'd the inter-squad games go? Did you get into it with anybody? Did you run a veteran and have Ryan Vandenbush chase you down or anything? How did that go?
I didn't at camp. In development camp, you don't really fight at development camp. And I think it was my second development camp. So Chicago would bring guys in for like a 3-week, 2-week span after the draft for all the kids, like just prospects, just have inter-squad practices type things. And the last one, I think of the first round pick that year was like Anton Babchuk.
Yep.
Like I hit him, and I remember him like shoving me in the face afterwards, and I'm like, no. And we ended up dropping our gloves, and we were squaring off, and we were just about to fight. And I'm kind of glad it got halted, because I don't know how much the GM would have liked me fighting a first rounder in development camp, so as an 8th rounder the year prior. So we're going to fight, and I'm squaring up, and we're grabbing on, and I realize like my pinky is completely broken. Like your pinkies, all the fingernails go the same direction. My pinky was like on the other side of my my hand, and I showed it to him, and he just I remember he pushed away and like stopped, and it was really weird. And the ref was there, and I showed the ref, and my pinky was like barely hanging on. So that's my awful Anton Babchuk fighting story that could have been.
Were you in main camp at all?
Yeah, I went to. At that time, Chicago didn't invite a lot of guys to the main camp, so I didn't go my first year, but I went the next year. So I want to say it was 03 or the 03 or 04 season. Well, not 04, 03.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we went to camp in 03, got in an exhibition game against Nashville. So, didn't stand out during the game, but played pretty well.
But that's got to be something, though. Like, it's preseason, whatever, but still, you're putting on a Blackhawks jersey and standing there. That's got to be, like, probably just get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Absolutely. I still remember, like, and you can tell, like, I've never been in an NHL room at that point, but you can tell it was like a preseason atmosphere, within the other guys on the team. Just looser than a regular season, or even like not even close to a playoff game. But I remember I was just so nervous and my heart was going. It calmed down through warm-ups, but that first 2 minutes of warm-ups, I'm sure if a fan looked at my jersey, they could see it, going up and down.
Yeah. Well, of course, you're there. Sean Thornton's there, Strudwick, Duncan Keith, all these guys. Did anybody big league you? Was there any guy that big leagued you at all? Or were they all pretty cool?
No. No. Everybody was great. Like you say, Ryan Vandenbush, but the game I played was in Nashville. We got there the night before, and he was my roommate. So I think they did that on purpose. But he was a great dude. I mean, it's been over 2 decades since we've seen each other, and he probably wouldn't even know me, but he was a great dude. I was always very, I left with a very positive impression of him and really everybody there. And nobody big-timed me at all.
Cool. That's cool.
They did it behind my back and laughed at me behind my back, so...
Well, you head back, and interestingly enough, you were traded to the Quebec Ramparts.
Yeah.
Was that a surprise to you, or did you ask for it, or Quebec at this? I should point out Quebec was actually hosting the Memorial Cup, so this is cool. You're going to be in the Memorial Cup regardless, but it's did that surprise you, or what happened there?
It was a huge shock because I went to camp that year with Paul, so I got traded during training camp, which was weird, and. I mean, it was a shock to get traded. I didn't want to get traded. I mean, we had a nice little core there at Hall. I had good buddies on the team, so I didn't want to be traded. But, I mean, here and I was going to Quebec City. I mean, I quickly got over that, with hosting the Memorial Cup and everything, and obviously playing in the Colisée and the city itself. I wasn't sad for too long, let's just say.
Yeah, well, you get there, Eric Levine's is the coach, and you got a couple characters, and one of them I'm just fascinated with. I brought it up to you a bunch of times. Well, of course, is Curtis Tidball, and 348 penalty minutes that year. Went on to play in the Quebec League forever, and crazy. And his younger brother, I saw his younger brother play here in Saskatoon, Brandon. What was it like playing with Curtis Tidball?
I loved Tids. I mean, me and Tids hung out a lot. He lived. It was funny because he lived with a family. The woman he lived with couldn't have been any younger than 75, and spoke no English. So we'd go over to his house, and she'd cook us dinner, and I don't even know if they said any words to each other all year. But he was a great dude, and he loved fighting. I just remember that. He loved it. Always, every game wanted to, you could see what he did in the Quebec League. Every game wanted to tilt.
Yeah, no, I know. And like I said, you sent me that YouTube video of the bench clearing brawl. I mean, and it's got to be we're jokes and, we're talking about brawls and stuff, but that's got to be scary when you get in a bench clearing brawl, especially if you grab, depending on who you end up with too. But I mean, how scary are those brawls?
That was I want to say it was definitely my first one, and I think bench clearing, that was the only one. But it was scary, and I think with that video, he got suspended 20 games for that, which was crazy. He basically suckered 2 guys. But yeah, the bench clearing brawls are scary because you never know who's coming behind you. It's really like a street fight at 2:30 outside a bar. There's really no rules, and you don't know who's coming behind you or whatnot.
No, absolutely. Well, in this season here, you had 17 fights and anything. When you went back, did Chicago kind of tell you anything hey, work on this or fight more, or did they say anything to you, or just good luck?
It was somewhere in between. They told me just keep doing what you're doing. I think the main thing they said is just you're tough enough and you're strong enough, but just maybe focus on the skating and focus on the skills with the puck, the stick handling, the the little tight plays, and that was really their only advice. They were hands off in a sense, but they would check up. They would have scouts come, and I don't know if it was have dinner before the game or have a coffee the day of the game, but they were pretty tapped in. I felt, that I wasn't just there on an island. They were in touch with me.
Well, a couple fights you had with some named guys that I want to touch on and see if you remember.
Yeah.
One of the fights is against George Davis. You remember him?
I do remember George Davis. Yeah, talk about 20-game suspensions. I think he got one of those too. That same year, or at least when I was in the league. But he was a tough dude. He was one of the top guys in the league at that time.
Yeah, folks, if you want to see Fourth Line Voice YouTube channel, check it out. Type in George Davis Superman Punch, and you'll see the 20-game suspension.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the league really didn't like that because that was like a nationally broadcast game too.
It was a TSN. It was a TSN game. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And that made the league look really bad. I think they came down on them, extra hard for that reason too.
Another guy that went on to have a really lengthy minor league career, and of course, at that time in junior, well, not the next year after, but kind of known as old Sid the Kid's bodyguard, Eric Nielsen.
Oh yeah, he was really tough. He was. I think he was a year younger than me, so like that year or two I played against him, he wasn't like the killer or the heavyweight he was at the end of his time in junior. And he went on to have a really, really good AHL career, enforcer-wise.
Yeah, and another guy played the minors for a while, Robert Snowball.
Yes, Robert Snowball, big dude.
Yes.
Didn't do that well against him. He was tough. He was big, too. I always had, he was big and strong. He's 6'3", and he's 230, so that was always just a touch out of my weight class at that height, me being 6'1", 205, 200.
Yeah, like I was going to ask you, when it came to fighting, did you, at 6'1", and again, like you said, against some of these heavyweights, most of the time, I'm sure you're punching uphill for the most part.
Yeah.
Now, did you like that, or did you like your own size, or, did you prefer to fight in tight, or you just didn't care? You're just like, yeah, whatever, let's fight.
No, if I could pick, it sounds crazy, but the height I'd like to fight, it would be like the 6'1", 6 foot, 6'2". Anything smaller than that, the smaller guys, the 5'10s, gave me a lot of trouble. And then the bigger guys, for obvious reasons, with their reach. Yeah, but yeah, the people on the extremes gave me the hardest. The smaller guys, and then like a Ty Domi size, or a George LeBrock size. Opposite end of the spectrum.
Well, at this point, you played 3 years of major junior. You're probably sitting at about 50 fights. Was there anybody that you fought that, when they hit you, it was like, oh, that sucked, I don't want to do that again? Was there anybody that was just like, you're just like, I'm never doing this again?
In juniors?
Yeah.
Or overall? In
junior. Because like we said, we were throwing around the names like Andre Waugh and Ettinger and Nielsen and and all these guys. They're junior. You had played some killers, man. Was there anybody that? I guess you're still teenagers, really. But was there anybody in junior that was like really gave it to you?
No, I don't remember any. And if I did, maybe that says something. But I don't remember anybody handedly beating me. I was scared of guys, and maybe it's because I didn't want to go near those guys, like a Trevor Ettinger, that or a Hunter Lahash. I know I fought Hunter, but those guys were, let's just say, super heavyweights, and I wasn't there. So, but nobody gave me, any damage that I still remember to this day.
Yeah, they weren't breaking your face or anything.
Yeah, exactly. I can't think of anybody back then, and time makes you forget, but nobody stands out in that sense.
Yeah. Well, because it was interesting, because it's I have the Ramparts DVD from that season, that fight DVD from that year, and I was going through it the other night after I talked to you, and
Yeah.
I was fast forwarding through it, but I mean, you look good in your fights. Like it wasn't, I don't recall you really like taking a major ass kicking or anything. So it was like, I was just sort of wondering, because like you said back then, I mean, and your fight card's good, man. Like you have some big names on it, and it was like, but you, you managed to survive.
Even through all my whole career, I can only remember maybe, I might, obviously nobody's going to win all their fights, but I remember only a handful where I would say I, lost decisively and where I would be like, oh, geez, that wasn't a good one. A lot of the other ones, I could, if I wasn't winning, I could at least hang in there and, make it even, or as even as I could.
Well, as Jeremy Yablonski once said, if you never lost a fight, it just means you're not fighting the right people. So there you go. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, like we said here, the Quebec Ramparts were hosting the Memorial Cup, which is obviously the biggest tournament in junior. And, that year, Kitchener Rangers, who ended up winning it, I believe, Kelowna, and of all teams, Hull. Your old team is in it. And, of course, they made it. Unfortunately, you guys went winless, and Hull was in the final. Was it sort of a kind of bittersweet, maybe a kick in the nuts?
The biggest kick in the teeth, because they're the ones who knocked us out, because they were our third game, and you had to win one to move on, and we lost that one. So that was a huge kick in the teeth, and it was a great tournament, and it was such a great experience, and we had a good team. But since you're the host, you get an automatic bid, which we knew we were going to be there, but we got bounced second round of the playoffs, and we were sitting around. I mean, we're practicing, obviously, but we were sitting around for a month and a half, and that really hurt us. And it doesn't help. You're off a month and a half, and you play Kitchener, who's just they were just loaded, and it was so tough to get our bearings. By the third period, you felt somewhat good because you hadn't played it a month and a half, but by that time it was too late in that game, and it was just hard to get up to speed when all the other three teams were just humming.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And they always say it's always tough with the host team, especially if you get bounced early in your own playoffs, and it's like now you're sitting around and idle time is never good for teenagers, right? So
it was awful. Because we did two-a-days for a month and a half, 2 months, and there was no end in sight either, because you're not playing your next game till when's the Memorial Cup, end of May.
Yeah.
So it was practice in the morning, practice at night, and that's cool. But you're bouncing, and you're not. It was tough to have that motivation when you're not playing for another month and a half. Yeah, and that's not good from a teenager's perspective either in Quebec City.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, one of the hardest trophies to win, because plus you're playing teams that you've never seen before in Kitchener and Kelowna, so it's Memorial Cup.
You can't pre-scout them, and it's not a drastic difference like everybody says, like the Western Ontario Quebec League. It's not as drastic as people think, but there's different styles of play than a Western team plays, and they have different makeups of personnel than a Quebec League team. Quebec League is generally a smaller, I guess, faster, and that shows in the makeup of their team. So I always found Western teams and Ontario teams played a little heavier game than a Quebec team.
Yeah, and looking back, we were talking earlier about, obviously, about hindsight and everything else. You look back on your 3 years in Quebec. You played for two legendary Quebec teams. Yeah. Went to a Memorial Cup. Picking looking back on it, do you sometimes wish maybe I followed Cam and went to the Ontario League or come out west to the Western League, or were you happy with your decision to go to Quebec?
Oh no. I loved the route I took. It was great.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it was the best 3 years of my life, but it was an awesome 3 years, and I had awesome experiences. And I mean, I grew as a person. I grew as a player. Like when I went to Hull, like I knew the game and I knew, you know, how to play, but I just knew it on a whole different level when I left Quebec. You know, I almost say I got a PhD in hockey those 3 years because I fully immersed myself into the, you know, the teams and the hockey and the culture, and I soaked it all in. So I loved my time in Quebec.
Watching our favorite NBA players is the gift that keeps on giving. And playing Pick 6 from DraftKings, the official partner of the NBA, is a way to take a shot at even more cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. And speaking of gifts, new Pick 6 customers play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the promo code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Happy holidays from DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awards as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Okay, well, that's like you said, you enjoyed Quebec, you had your junior experience, and now it's on to pro. Unfortunately, in 04-05, of course, is the NHL lockout. Everyone's kind of, I mean, the American League is stacked, and it's like, you know, and I mean, it didn't, you know, as a young guy going into pro, I mean, that's kind of puts you, you know, sort of at the bottom of the food chain when you got NHL guys coming down and prospects and everything else.
Yeah.
And you end up with the Texas Wildcatters in the East Coast Hockey League.
Yes.
What was your first impressions of Texas?
I'd never been to Texas prior, so I didn't really have any expectations, but it was a town that I think it was their second year having a team. So, I mean, it was a new building, but they had a small group of, you know, very loyal and great fans, but it wasn't super well receptive in the town because I think there was a lot of issue with the arena and who paid for the arena and where it was built and, you know, city plans and city votes. So there was a good chunk of people that got turned off to hockey in Beaumont for that reason, just because they didn't agree with the rink, I believe, and how that was built and funded.
Well, and it's just sort of looking at your team that you played 68 games, 224 penalty minutes. So you can't. Unfortunately, this is the one season I don't have your fight card for. I got the I got the rest of them, but I don't have this one. But
a lot.
What was unfortunately, and I get, you know, I'm not you know, you guys weren't very good. You finished last, what
it was a tough it was a tough year. I mean, as you can imagine, I don't know how many games we won. If we won 20, I would be shocked.
You won 17. 17.
Yep, there you go. It was just it was a tough year for pro because I'm just learning, and I come from, you know, the 3 previous years in Quebec. I mean, we didn't win championships or anything like that, but we were in every game and we were above 500 every year, all those teams. So it was a shock, like coming to a team in an organization that wasn't winning. That was really tough. But I remember I remember before the season, I wanted to make a name for myself, and I thought if I was, you know, dropping the gloves and fighting and, you know, being a rat, that was the best way to kind of make my mark. And get my footing in pro hockey.
Well, I mean, you had some tough guys in the team with you, some young guys, and a guy from out west here, Grant McNeil.
Grant McNeil was really, he was really tough.
Yes,
he was a good player too.
Yeah, and Thomas Belmar, Brad Voth.
Yes.
So you guys didn't lack for toughness on the team, that's for sure.
No, we just lack for scoring goals.
Yeah,
you got to do that.
You got to do that too.
Do that to win. Yes, that's another part of the game. We had a tough team, and Voth was out most of the. Seems like he was out most of the season, and even Belmar was only there for maybe 20 games, 30 games.
Yep.
Definitely not after Christmas. So. A lot of times it was just me, and then Grant McNeil, I think, was kind of up and down, if I remember, with San Antonio, I think was the team.
Yes, yeah. And, he played 24 games with you guys, right? And 100 minutes, and, so he was definitely up and down, too. So you were sort of like the lone gunman there for that season, really.
Yeah, and I never liked that as a fighter. I always liked to have another guy with me to kind of be like if I could, horrible analogy, but like be a Robin to someone's Batman. I was never tough enough to be the top guy. So if I had like another, big tough D-man, that was always ideal for me, because then it took a little pressure off me. But yeah, that year in Texas, I want to say I was really the only guy, aside from those other guys that were kind of in and out.
Well, one of the teams, we won't dwell on Texas for very long, but I know one of the teams that you would have played a lot was Louisiana, because they were in your division. And there's a couple characters on Louisiana that I have to ask you about. One was Sean Skihar, and the other one was Chris Thompson.
I remember the names, and I remember they were tough, but I don't remember any specific instances for those. Sorry, Sean and Chris Thompson, but I'm drawing a blank on. I remember playing against them, and I remember they were tough, but as far as anything specific, I don't remember. I remember a guy from Mississippi, Chris Cava. We had a nice little rivalry there. But the two guys from Louisiana, I'm not sure.
Well, it's just kind of funny because Chris Thompson kind of played the same way you did. I thought for sure, I'm like, you two probably ended up I thought you would have ended up like strangling each other or something, but because you both kind of played that same way, right? So you're like you said, your first year pro, it's kind of a little, you wasn't that strong of a season in Texas. Were you at this point? Were you sort of like? You're like you said, your first year pro, you're going into your second year pro. Was there any sort of like, I don't know if this like, what's going on here, or like you're sort of like Chicago sort of left you in limbo at this point? Like, what are you feeling?
I didn't sign with Chicago, so I was in an East. I was with Texas on a one-way East Coast deal. And and then the next year it was in limbo, but I kind of just thought the first year I got to play. I mean, I got 70 games, let's round up, and I got some good experience. And my thing was just to go into that second year to kind of grow and learn, and find my footing a little more in the game and become a little more comfortable. Yeah,
and. So you start I could think of, you're in California, you're playing in Stockton, and then you finish the season in Reading, in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So kind of from one end to the other. Was it a sort of a tale of two cities that season? Like, how did that season go for you?
It went really good. When I got to Reading, it went great. We had a great team. I mean, I remember I came in halfway through the year, so that's always tough to kind of, assimilate yourself to a new team. But we had, a couple tough guys. Who was this? Jeff State, Tyler Hamchuk. they were some tough guys. So I fit in with that team, I thought, and I played good hockey there. We got bounced first round of the playoffs, but I was having good fights. I was in the North. As far as getting seen, that's probably a little better. Whether I was on any AHL teams' radars at that time, I'm not sure, but I thought I was playing good hockey. We were playing good hockey, and I felt that, when I was in Reading, I was kind of hitting my stride with fighting and, my playing. So I felt good in Reading. The first half in Stockton, probably not so much, but the second half I felt good.
Well, I was going to say, you left, obviously Stockton finished last that year, so it's probably, obviously, like you said, a good thing. But when you get to Reading, in that North Division, I mean, you're playing in some classic barns in like Toledo and Wheeling and Johnstown. What was it like? I always ask the guys that, what's it like the first time you go to Johnstown? Of course, home of Slapshot and everything, and you're in that old war memorial. What's that like? Did you just walk around and just take it all in?
Nuts. Because as every hockey player, they've seen the movie 1,000 times. So I remember when we got there, I had to go out to, it was my first game in Reading, and I can get into the story with that. But my first game was in Johnstown, so I was like, oh my God, just let me see the rink before I step on the ice for warm ups, just so I can get that awe or get that newness out. And it was pretty cool to see. It was tough because I got traded from Stockton, and I took, I want to say a flight at 10 p.m. on a Thursday out of San Francisco, flew all night into Philadelphia, got into Philadelphia, and I think they drove me to Johnstown, and I played that night. So my first game was on just no sleep and, airport sandwiches and airport smoothies. Into Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So that was an eye-opener.
Yeah, and like you said, you had a solid year there. 16 fights that year. One of the guys you fought went on to have an excellent NHL career, or AHL career, was Jimmy Bonu. That's a big dude, man. Yeah. I knew of him from juniors, just from the Quebec League. I don't know if we played each other or just know the name, but yeah, he was really tough. He had a really good AHL career. I don't know if he had got NHL games, but he was tough. He was big. He was mean. He really he ticked a lot of boxes. And for me, he was always maybe I say it in a nice way, like a little screw loose. You never knew what he might do. Yep.
And I always thought those guys were a little more valuable than the guys that you knew were really tough, but you knew that weren't really going to do anything. So he maybe had a little mean streak in him that I think put him to that next level and gave him good success as a pro.
One guy, I don't know if you'll remember him, but he had a big rep in the Ontario League. He was a smaller guy, and he only played the 1 year of pro, and he played in Dayton. Marco Caprera. Yeah,
he was tiny. I don't know if I fought him or if he fought another guy on our team, but he was so small, and I'm talking 5'9".
Yeah.
Definitely not over 180, 200 pounds. But he was really tough. He was shockingly tough. You always saw the penalty minutes, but then when you might think he might just be kind of a rat, but he was tough. I mean, he may not be able to, beat any really heavyweights up, but he could definitely stand toe to toe with them.
Yeah, no, you did fight him. But I was just, because his name stood out to me, because I remember hearing all about this guy in the Ontario League, and then he just played the 1 year, of pro. But yeah, 5'9", 170 is what he's listed at. But I know he smoked guys in the Ontario League. But I
would think he probably those kind of guys. He seemed like he was a boxer, a Golden Glove boxer. Kind of like a Rick Rippon type in a sense.
Well, that's hilarious. That's so funny you mentioned Rick Rippon. His brother actually played on that Dayton team too, Wes.
Yeah.
And
I don't remember Wes very much, but when I would watch Rick fight, and he was a great fighter, and I know he was a boxer. You can just tell, like, by the way they fight and their kind of fearlessness at 5'9", that they had some prior fighting aside from, with the skates on.
Well, and then the following season, you played a couple seasons in Augusta the next couple years.
Yeah.
When you're when you're bouncing around here, like, is there like, how are you how are you selecting these teams? Is it just like whoever phones with the best offer? I want to be in the north. I want to be here. I want to go somewhere warm where I don't have to plug my car in. What's your? I don't want to scrape my windows in the morning. I want to golf. Like, what's your plan here?
When I went to Augusta, I think I got some kind of whether it was a Portland camp or something like that, or some kind of American League like sweetener before the season. So that's why I went to Augusta that first year, and we had a really, really good team. We had a good affiliation with Portland and Anaheim. So that's why I went there, and I thought I could do some things. I know the coach there had a track record with producing some good players, and I knew he had some good connections. And it was a good city as far as travel, where you're going to decent cities. You're going to like Columbia, South Carolinas, and Charleston, South Carolinas. So it's a little easier living than, say, if you're in the north, or if you're in the west and you're playing in Victoria and you're flying all the time. So the travel is a little nicer in the south. That was one of the reasons. And
are you at this point? You're 22. You're in Augusta. Are you getting discouraged at this point? Like that, you're kind of like, you're drafted by the Blackhawks. You didn't sign. Now you're not in the American League, and it's like, at some point, are you kind of? Yeah. I mean, you're sitting in the draft, and it's the minors, right? Everyone's sitting there, and I mean, you see guys get called up, and you're happy for them, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, fuck, that should be me, man. Like, like everyone's selfish in the minors at some level, right? You have to be.
Yeah, nobody's. I don't know. I don't think anybody wants to be in an East Coast locker room. I mean, everybody in the East Coast locker room wants to be in an American League locker room, and everybody in an American League locker room wants to be in an NHL locker room. So I was, frustrated. I was playing, no excuse. I was playing great hockey my third year, and I got a season-ending injury, and that really sucked. That, I don't know, put me back, but that took some wind out of my sails. But yeah, it's tough that fourth year in the coast in Augusta, playing in Augusta, then going to Bakersfield halfway through the year. It was tough, and it was discouraging. I don't think you'd be a competitor in a athlete that wants to move up if you didn't felt discouraged after 4 years on the coast.
Well, what do they say? Easy come, hard to leave, right? That's the East Coast League.
I would say that, and somebody told me that my first year, and I never really understood it, but it's tough. It's tough to make it out of that league as a guy that's not signed. Like the East Coast League puts out all this alumni, and their alumni is great. All the people that they got going from the East Coast to the American League to the NHL, but those guys were in the East Coast on an NHL deal.
Yeah.
So to go from, and that's a little different. To go from like an East Coast one-way deal, work your way up to the AHL, work your way up to the NHL, that's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard. It's starting, if you're running a 100-yard dash, it's starting 5 yards behind everybody. And it's not like it can't be done. I think, like the biggest, but example of that Alexander Burrows. I always think of him going from straight East Coast, AHL to NHL. So yeah, long story short, I definitely got discouraged.
Well, then it's like anything, right? It starts in like minor hockey and goes all the way through pro and everything else. There's politics involved, and you have to have the right people in your corner. Because like I remember having this argument online with people. I'm like, dude, do you think every guy in the NHL is better than every guy in the American League? Hardly. There are guys in the American League that are sitting there that could play in the NHL, no problem. But whether through lousy agents or political or the coach doesn't like them or whatever, there's a reason why they're down there. And skills about 10th on the checklist. Like it goes it's beyond that, right? So and like we were saying, right? You're sitting in that Augusta locker room and you seeing guys getting called up, and you're like, "Are you serious?" I'm way better than that guy, But his agent might know the coach, or they got a guy in there, or that coach just likes, I don't know, likes that guy better than you, right? So
somebody owes a favor to somebody else, or whatnot. But I generally think, like in hockey, the cream always rises to the top. If you're good enough in the East Coast League, I like to think it doesn't always happen, but the good moves up, and you kind of get slotted where you deserve in the grand scheme of things. And there's guys that slip through the cracks, and guys who go to the NHL that may not deserve it as much as like an AHL guy. But I generally think everything kind of evens out in the end.
Yeah. Was there, like, at this point, are you like really dialed in on your game? What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of who you are and what you do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that, from when I went to juniors, I knew what I wanted to be, and I knew kind of the role that I needed to be. So, I always really prided myself on, being high character, being hardworking, being physical, bringing energy, trying to be a leader in practice, trying to be good in practice, trying to be professional. So I was dialed in that sense, in that I tried to bring, a lot of things that other guys maybe couldn't bring, whether it's blocking a shot. Obviously the physicality, the fighting was something that definitely separated myself, but I kind of always had a mold of what kind of player I wanted to be. I mean, it sounds weird, but I would spot shadow when I was younger and watch games. I would spot shadow like Darren McCarty and Randy McKay. Those were two guys that were always on with the Red Wings and the Devils. So I knew that was my mold. And if I was going to do anything with hockey, that was who I had to be. And obviously being super tough to play against and a rat, that always came into play too.
Well, and that was the thing. And I mean, I'm not saying this is a slight to you as you just said it, but I mean, you were known to play a ratty game out there. Like you would get under people's skin. Was there, and I mean, I remember somebody asked like Barnaby this question once, and I asked you, because it was the same thing. Like when I was talking to my friend Jay, they're like, yeah, no, he played tough. He fought everybody, but he was a rat. Like, I mean, and guys hated you. Well, we can get into the Cole King interview. Like, he's not a fan of yours. Like, he genuinely didn't like playing against you. It was, your name's come up a few times with guys that you got under their skin. Was there any time, and like, because nowadays it's always all about the chirps and everything else. Were you kind of obviously you were yappy, but like, were you more yappy or kind of not trying to injure guys, but like, you'd get the stick going and everything. And like, did you ever think you took it too far? Was there ever a time you think you took it too far?
Absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. Listen, I was a rat, and I would be hard to play against, and I would empty a water bottle in your skate when you're standing there for a face-off, or I'd stick you, or I'd say something. But I never took it too far. I never I never went to a death in the family, or I never went in on race, or I never went in on religion, or I never went in I don't know, if a guy had a substance problem. So I never went on those things. Everything else was fair game, but I felt I never crossed the line. And if I did, I don't remember it, and it wasn't intentional.
Like the water bottle into the skate. That's pretty good. Was there any other?
Oh yeah.
What were some of the? What was one of your gimmicks? Like what did you like doing to guys? Maybe subtle behind the play thing, or what did you like to do?
Just kind of like the verbal jabs. You you don't have to like work very hard to find out about guys in hockey. So just keep your ears open, hear about what they do and some things about their off ice, maybe bring that in and little poke and just get them off their game. My thing was like, if I could get you off your game and I can have you thinking about me and I can have your attention focused elsewhere, you're not focused on the game. And if I could get maybe like a star player to do that, that would be even better, because usually star players drive the ships for teams. So if, a second line or a third liner, a fourth, fifth, sixth defenseman is looking at their star player and he's going crazy, he's lost his temper, that's going to, flow down through that team. And you almost got that team, in a mental mind trap at that time.
Do you remember anybody off the top of your head that you could just get into their, like you could just knock them off their game easily?
Oh, yeah.
Was there anybody that who was one guy that you're like, this guy, I think this guy legitimately wants to kill me right now? Was there anybody?
Carlisle Lewis. Definitely Carlisle Lewis. And again, I never went over the line with Carlisle Lewis, but yeah, I could really get him going. And it was even odder because he was he was maybe not a captain, but he was an assistant captain, a leader, a veteran presence, and he would get so rattled, and it was so easy to get in his kitchen, and I could just see other guys on the team looking at him getting so rattled, and he was really easy to get going. And again, it was just on the ice. I mean, I don't know Carlisle Lewis whatsoever off the ice, so it wasn't anything personal, obviously.
Well, like you said, before we get to the UK, you were in Bakersfield. Yeah. You got traded to Bakersfield. Yeah. Well, one of the cities that was in that division was Vegas. That had to be a pretty good road trip when the boys rolled into Las Vegas.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you played. I know they don't have a team in there now, but the NHL team. But you played at a casino.
The Orleans. That's where I stay all the time when I go to Vegas. The Orleans. Yes, that's where the rink was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the rink was in a casino, and it was just wild. Like, I remember going to game, and you're walking with your suitcase or whatever, and you're going to the rink, but you're cutting through the blackjack tables. And I remember putting $20 on red or something, or playing a hand of blackjack before you got to the rink, and that was kind of cool. That was something like going in Vegas.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the UK, I have to ask you about a couple fights, because you fought a cat that people will obviously remember this name, and he was just a rookie in Alaska at the time, and you fought him back-to-back nights, Ryan Reeves.
Yeah. Ryan Reeves did not have the reputation that he has now. I can tell you that, because I think it was just his first year pro.
Yep.
And he wasn't in the East Coast League very long. So it was back to back, and I remember because we had a guy one of my friends on my team played with him the last 3 years. So I asked him about Ryan Reeves. I looked at his height, his weight. He had some penalty minutes in juniors, but I remember my buddy's like, yeah, he's not that tough. He's more of a skilled guy. So it was crazy to see what he's become. But I think the first one, he was at the end of a shift and he shoved one of our guys in front of the bench, and then it just kind of escalated from there. The first one went well. I mean, I don't want to say I won or anything like that, but that was a good fight. And then the second one was kind of a dud the next night. But yeah, pretty cool to have Ryan Reeves on my fight card.
Oh, I think you're being way too nice about this. I'd be telling everybody I kicked the shit out of Ryan Reeves. That's what I did. You didn't have to. No one needs to know he was a rookie back then. You could just say you did it. No one has to ask questions.
Yeah, he was a killer back then. He was super scary back then too. Yeah. I could definitely see NHL, top 5 guy then.
Exactly. Well, one guy that you actually played with and ended up fighting later, of course, is the Washington Capitals head coach these days, Spencer Carberry.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I fought Spencer, and he played for Stockton, so I was going back there with Bakersfield, and I guess nobody. I didn't know Spencer Carberry because he played college. I think it was his first year pro, so I didn't really know anything about him. I didn't see any of his fights on YouTube, and back then that was a lot more limited. But I guess nobody forgot to tell me he was a lefty, and I remember he hit me with a left, and I want to say knocked me out of my feet for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and after that I came to, and he was obviously feeding me with my jersey over my head. So Spencer Carberry 1, Jason 0.
Oh, everybody takes a loss. Oh, I was going to ask you. I forgot to ask you. And I'm assuming they probably made overtures to you in the offseason, especially having played in the Quebec League. I don't know if you know this or not, but you were drafted by St. Jean in the LNAH draft in the as their 8th pick. Did you have any thoughts of playing in the LNAH?
Oh God, no. God, no.
Because I know they would have thrown a lot of money your way. Did you? You didn't even think about it?
Not enough. Not enough. No, I couldn't do that. That, you know what, I like to fight, and I was always a physical player, and that was my thing. But that seemed to take it to a whole nother kind of staged level.
Oh yeah,
that I wasn't really wanting to be a part of.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it can go two ways, right? Because, I mean, those guys were making really outside of the American Hockey League, they were making the most money you could make playing hockey, but the problem is you're going to have to fight twice every night, and against, like, Morasti and Steve Bosse and Joel Theriault and, like, killers. Yeah,
that didn't interest me at all, and, like, I don't know the professionalism of the league, but, like, I know you only play on weekends. And a lot of the guys, like the local guys, like have full-time careers. I mean, I don't know if they're like, State Farm, insurance agents Monday through Friday, and then bash people's heads in Saturday and Sunday. But that wasn't interesting me too, because I couldn't work in Quebec, so what would I do Monday through Friday? Or it didn't make any sense on really any level to me.
All right. Well, there we go, folks. You're LNH fans. There's your answer. Well, because I know at that time, I mean, they were always looking for guys, and
I know,
and I know they would have got a hold of you because, especially having that Quebec junior background too. So,
because I think in that league, if you is. I don't know if like a non-Quebec guy is considered an import, but if you're a non-Quebec guy and you played in the Quebec League, you don't count as an import. I could just be missing.
Well, no, that's now you have to be from Quebec or have played in the Quebec Junior League. But back then, the time that we're talking about, it was wide open. It didn't matter. So anybody could play there. And, I mean, the money was flying around, and I mean. Yeah, I was involved. I know all the money that was in that league, and it was crazy. But in order to get guys to come, you had to pay crazy amounts, right? So you had guys making $2,500 a week. Like Curtis Tidbull was probably making $1,500 a game, $2,000 a game. But you're going to have to fight 65 times in a year, right? So, that was a different world back then.
I look at where's that money coming from too. Who's signing those paychecks?
Jason, we don't ask those. We didn't ask those types of questions back then. It was better that you didn't know.
Don't tell.
Exactly. Straight cash, homie. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of T4s getting handed out. I don't think. Everybody. Yeah, I mean, it's an open secret that the Hells Angels and the mob and everything. Well, they laundered money through the teams, right? So that's But I mean, as it got later on, there was some obviously like legit business guys that got involved. But then it's almost like I always liken it to like The Simpsons, the softball episode with the two rich power plant owners, and they buy the ringers. That's exactly what this became. And I mean, you had the St. Jean owner. I mean, they had $1 million payroll. They were bringing in NHL guys. And it's like they were throwing money around left and right, and it became it was crazy times.
Like Mr. like Mr. Burns getting Ken Griffey.
Exactly. Well, there you go. You could have been St. Jean's Ken Griffey.
Yes.
Yeah. But instead, you decided to create some anarchy in the UK, and you head over to Hull of the British League. How did you get over there, and what was your experience like over there?
I got over there. We kind of touched on it a bit ago, but I just wanted a change in my career. After 4 years in the coast, you see the American Hockey League dream kind of dwindling, and you just want to change a pace in your career and your life in hockey. And so they're one of the teams that offered. What was the second part?
No, just how did you enjoy your time over there?
Loved it. I loved it, and it was really tough to get used to because that league, like, it's you had the, and it could be different now, but back then you had the Belfast, you had the Sheffield, you had the Nottingham. So those are like maybe Coventry. Those are like the haves, and then you had the other teams like the Edinburghs, the Halls. Basingstoke, and those are the have-nots, and it was just a tale of almost two leagues in how it ran.
Yeah, I mean, I've often heard that, and it's were you given everything you were promised? Did the lease come through there?
Oh yeah, I never had to worry about like a paycheck or anything like that. I never had any doubt about that. But just the standards that you have after playing, 3 years in junior hockey and then playing in the East Coast League at good organizations for 4 years, you kind of expect it to be a standard within an organization. And when you get to an organization like Hall that was a smaller budget, and the locker room, the lack thereof, lack there was like with, facilities as a whole, it took a little bit to get used to for that. And if I was in Sheffield or Nottingham or Belfast, that would have been completely different. But it took a while to adjust to going to Hull with where I was.
It's been interesting because I've had a number of guys on the show that they played over there, and everybody sort of seems to have the same sort of kind of opinions on the league. Like, they all enjoyed it. They say that the fans are diehards, much like the soccer fans, right? It's this is our team, and basically screw everyone else. It's just we're diehard in the wool. This is our team, like almost like the hooligan mentality, right?
Those fans in Hull, like there weren't many, just because it was a smaller team, a smaller budget, a smaller rink, and a smaller city. But those fans were great, and I felt bad for them in a sense that like they always had a team that was below 500. But those fans in England as a whole were awesome. Like the Nottingham fans, the Sheffield fans, they were great fans. They made the game fun. They had a good culture when you're at the rink in England.
Well, and I was going to say, just in general for you, I mean, especially with the way you play and everything else, I mean, you're the number one villain, right? You're the bad guy. Yeah. When over there, like, what rink did you love go? Like, what rink did they just get on you the most? Like the fans just hated you.
I like the big ones, like the Sheffield. I remember Nottingham. Nottingham's, I mean, it's not a huge building, and maybe like 5,000-10,000, but it was a great building, a great atmosphere. So I always loved playing there. I mean, the fans were hard, but again, they never crossed the line or anything like that. But I would say Nottingham, Sheffield. Those are the two cool teams to go to.
One of the teams, Newcastle. They had some characters. Of course, they had the late Andre Payet was on that team. Of course, legend over there. Big Chris McAllister from Saskatoon here, and another guy that played exactly like Tyler Willis. You had to have had some run-ins with Willis.
Yes. Not. I remember Willis. That team. I mean, pound for pound, they were probably one of the toughest teams up and down the lineup. They were scary. Yeah, I was. I wouldn't say it then, but I was on my best behavior when I played Newcastle because I didn't want any issues because they had, like you said, McAllister, Willis, Payet, Derek Campbell. They had some tough guys, and with that kind of screw loose mentality, which was even scarier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, and then Belfast with Bobby Robbins and Jason Rushton. I mean, there was a lot of toughness over there at the time.
Oh, absolutely there was. I mean, that league is, I don't want to say built on North Americans, but it's a North American heavy league. So there's a ton of tough guys too. It's where, I can go down the list, but yeah. Never had a shortage of takers on the other team if you wanted.
No, and then one guy I got to throw played for Basingstoke. I've had him on the show a couple times. Great dude, tough as shit. Was Jeremy Cornish?
Oh yeah. He was a tough guy, scary, like screw loose. Like you never know if he's going to do something to you. He was super tough. I don't think I ever fought him, but
yeah. How about Nottingham? What was it like playing against Roman Ender?
I never feared Roman Nader. I mean, I know if I ever dropped the gloves, like I think he would handle me pretty well. I'll just be straight honest there. But he was never somebody that if I was running around being a rat, he would grab me and give me no choice. So I don't want to say too nice, but I knew he wasn't going to grab me or sucker me. So that always, lessened the fear of Roman Nader because I knew I wouldn't have to drop the gloves with him, and I knew I didn't want to.
Yeah,
he was more fun to poke at anyway. It was more fun to poke the bear and watch the bear get excited.
Well, like you said, you were talking about Carlisle Lewis earlier, and him, and and like Attenborough had like Stephanishin, and of course Cardiff had like McIver, and Voth was over there, But what was I going to say? Oh, when I have guys on, one of their they love it over there and everything else, but their biggest complaint is the refereeing.
Oh, yeah, the referees.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing, because the guys that I have on the show are obviously the tough guys, right? So obviously they're not. If I was talking to a goal scorer, they might, oh no, they're okay. But it's like, when it's the tough guys, it's like, they hated them, and they just they didn't know what they were doing, and they just
right. They didn't know it, and I don't want to generalize, and it could change, but I think even the skill players wouldn't like the refs because the refs didn't really protect the skill players. They would let a lot of slashes go where, in North America, they would call that and calm it down to kind of, help those guys. But they just didn't know what they were doing. And let's just say inadequate, I thought, as a whole, the refereeing there.
Yeah. I always have to basically, what was your, favorite rink to play in over there, and what was the worst rink to play in?
The worst was Edinburgh. I think that I don't know if they're still in the league, but that was the worst because you would always drive there the day of the game. So it was, like a 6-hour bus trip to Edinburgh. You'd get off, and it was just a dark rink, and it was you're in the bus for 6 hours and you play. That was probably the worst rink, and then the best, just those Nottinghams, the Sheffields, the Coventrys. I'm trying to think. Those are the big ones that I can remember being really nice.
Oh, Belfast looks pretty cool.
Yeah, Belfast too. Yeah, Belfast.
Yeah.
Belfast was like an NHL rink, and it was weird because I've never. You walk in like the underscore of a rink, and like I've never seen a rink smell like so much like just stale beer. So I was like, we are in Ireland. Just the 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 smells of the under the rink was straight up like a brewery.
Tremendous. There you go.
Yeah.
What so you played the season there in Hull, and then you're back in North America the following year. Did you just was it just something you're like, okay, I got that out of my system, let's go back to North America, or was it just?
I would have gone back, but I don't know. I didn't have a great year in Port Huron the following year. I picked up, my final 3 years in quad. I played really well, but I didn't want to go back to England, to go back to Hull, or to go back to one of the lower teams in the league. It just didn't feel worth my time. And if I would have got an offer from one of the better teams, I probably would have taken it. But I guess they lost my email or my phone number.
All right. And just in general, obviously we don't need to do your taxes or anything, but just out of curiosity, in terms of money, was it similar to the East Coast League or more?
It was a little better, but it's not moving. It's a little better, but I don't think it's jumping me up 2 tax brackets or anything like that.
It wasn't putting you in the 1%, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Okay.
It was nice. It was nice that it was tax free, and that sort of thing. And they provided a car, and they provided all the living accommodation. So really, all the money was going right into your pocket. But you weren't getting rich, but it was above the East Coast League level.
I know from talking to some of the guys that played in the minors and everything else, especially guys that maybe kind of homesteaded and played in the team for a certain place for a long time. Everybody's got their hookups, right? And what was the best team that you played on for like hookups?
I don't know. In Texas, we had, it sounds so silly now, but we had like buy one, get one free Outback. So like we got a ton of, I was always eating Outback at Texas. There were restaurant deals and cool things like that. But I would say Texas with the Outback, and then a couple places in Baco where we can eat for free. The boosters would, provide us awesome, perks.
Yeah. I saw a few guys, it's like they had kind of like hookups at golf courses and stuff, and just stuff like that.
Yeah, there's always that.
Yeah.
Always that stuff around. A booster has a boat or something like that.
Yeah. The one guy owns a garage, so you can kind of get the car. You can get some cheap deal and tires and stuff. And, all these guys, especially guys that have played there for a long time, they know everybody, right?
Yeah. Free haircuts.
You have to drop a couple game tickets at the front desk, and you're getting your shit for free. And a
little perks here or there.
Absolutely,
little perks here or there.
Of course,
some places had a ton of other ones. I always heard, there's like Florida in the East Coast League. Always, you always hear they have great perks and great benefits aside from being in Florida.
Yeah, from talking to guys like back in the Central League days, like Oklahoma City said was just awesome back then. They had everything, because that was before they even had the Thunder. Like they had no pro teams other than that hockey team. So they were it, right? So they were like the celebrities in town. So they got everything. They said, yeah. And
then you see that like the documentary with the Danbury Thrashers.
Yes,
that's a whole different type of perk, and as opposed to free garlic bread. But it's of varying degrees at every team.
Oh for sure. Well, like you said, the IHL, the new IHL in 2009, 2010 with the Port Huron Ice Hawks. Well, you came out of the gate swinging, 22 fights. Head coach Stan Drulia. What was your 1 year in Port Huron like?
It was I can look back at it now and kind of look with some hindsight, but it was a tough year. Like the city, I never felt comfortable like not within the organization, but I never felt comfortable on the ice. I never felt good about my game. I never felt good about my fights. It was a tough year, I guess. Like from a hockey perspective, you had some really good dudes on the team. It was funny. one of my good friends on the team is now like the head coach of University of Michigan. So you make some cool connections there, but it was just a tough year, but personally, fighting wise, game wise, it's one of the ones where by like January, February, you're like, oh man, can the season be over? You're not counting down the days, but it's just like, oh man, let's just hit reset this summer.
Well, I was going to say your fight card when you ended up fighting Willis twice that year.
Yeah, I remember one of them, but I really don't remember. He was with Flint, and I remember Tyler Willis, he was always on. Like, and maybe guys said that about me too, but it never seemed to be an easy game against Tyler Willis. And that's a testament, I guess, to him.
Yeah.
He made the game really tough where if he was on the ice and you were going out for a face-off, you knew you were going to hear something, or you knew you're going to hear how big of a loser you are, how ugly you are from Tyler Willis.
Yeah. Well, you had Robin Gomez a couple times, Mark Recklish a couple times.
Yeah.
Another guy that was kind of a hero in Fort Wayne, old Schrocky Balboa, Kaylee Schrock. You won him a couple times too.
Yeah, I guess that was one of my rivals. Like, and again, we're grown adults now, but at the time, it was tough to like him and not respect, but he was a tough guy to play against. I always wanted to fight, and I did fight him a lot. So yeah, he was a little rat too.
Well, I was, and another cat, Robin Big Snake.
Yeah, Robin Big Snake was a tough one too. I think he was only there for a little bit for I think it was Muskegon.
Yep.
I don't think he was there the whole year. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah, he was tough. He definitely had a presence that first 2 months of the season.
Well, one guy that was on your team that was kind of a tough dude was Jason Selicki.
Yeah, Slick. Yeah, Slick was awesome. Yeah, he was really tough. It was funny because me and Slick were always like, I think you could have 11 forwards, so you had 3 lines and then 2 extras. And me and Slick were always kind of the 2 extras, and we would always make jokes like if a winger, one of our wingers, like didn't get the puck, we would always look back at the coach, like, I got to get that out, got to get it out, or just playfully jabbing other guys on the team because we were sitting stapled to the bench as the grocery sticks. He was a great dude. That's what I remember most about Slick, giving our teammates grief because we were stapled to the bench by Stan.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could, at this point, you're a veteran, and it's like you've been around, and it's like you're sitting here in Port Huron, like you got to be like, what are we doing here? Like, how many closed door meetings did you have with Stan about your ice time?
A couple.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, a couple. Yeah, I remember like. And I don't want to get into like what exactly was said, but I was like, what am I doing? Where am I? I came in to be, a third liner, maybe kill that last half of the PK off, be a physical guy. And it's not for lack of effort, and it's not for lack of want, but why aren't I playing? Where can I get more ice time? What can I do? And I guess we never, that never came to fruition where I felt good about myself. So it was a tough year. Let's just say that.
Well, I was going to say between you and like Selicki, that was about it for like, in terms of toughness. Yeah. Like, did you just sort of get the feeling that he's okay? I'm the 4th line dummy in his mind. Is that what my role is here? Is that basically the way he treated you?
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I mean, he didn't treat me any different than anybody else. Like Stan treated me great. Like Stan was professional. I had a good working relationship with Stan, but I knew once January comes and you haven't left the third line, or you're not getting this, or you're not getting put out of this situation, you kind of realize where you're at in the pecking order. You obviously try to punch your way up the lineup, but it's hard. It was hard.
Well, one guy that you played with, you fought a couple times, you ended up playing with, and a very similar role as you is that I was told to ask you about was Patrick Levesque.
Oh, yes, Patrick Levesque. He's a character, Patrick Levesque. Yeah, I think he's like settled down in Quad City now. He's got a wife and a family, which is awesome. But yeah, he was an interesting cat.
Well, like you said, Quad City. There you go. You play your final 3 seasons in Quad City, and you said you just how are your feelings of Quad City? Did you obviously you enjoyed your time? That's where you played actually the most of your career, or the biggest time in your career. What made Quad City just so appealing to you that you stayed?
I like a lot of other people. I met a girl from Quad Cities. We now my wife. We got a child. So that kind of got me to stay in one sense, but it was also a really good group of guys. We had a nice little core group, and I felt really comfortable there. I felt comfortable going to the rink. I felt the fans were great. And I felt really good. It was a good setup at the rink. You lived in decent places. You got treated well. Like a nice booster club, nice fans that would help you out. So I felt really comfortable in Quad Cities, and it was tough because there was a lot of turmoil, in the organization at that time. I think we went through I had 3 different coaches, 3 years, 3 different ownership groups. So we didn't know if we were going to play. We didn't know what if the team was getting sold, if the team was folding. So besides the off-ice drama, it was a great time. Yeah,
well, you did a lot. Well, once again, you did a lot of fighting. Your first year, you had 19 fights. But one guy I have to ask you, I was looking at your fight card. You fought this dude 4 times from Evansville, Mark Cody. Did you? What did he do? How much did you hate this guy?
It was one of those things. We were kind of similar players. We were. I mean, he was around the same age. We were same build, same style of player, and we always just seemed to run into each other. And it became a time where you play the guy and you fight the guy, you hate him as a player, and then you kind of develop. I don't know. Friendship is a weird word, but you develop a little more respect as you play against each other. So I liked Mike Cody. By the end, we were fighting, but it wasn't anything malicious or anything like that.
Well, I know another guy you fought that first season went by Weapon X, and I've had him on the show a couple times. Of course, he's on Shoresy now. Alex Penner.
Okay. Oh, he's on Shoresy? I don't watch the show, but he's on it. I know Morasti's on it.
He is. He is on Shoresy. Yeah, he plays on one of the teams they play against. Yes, Drew Palmer is his name on the show. Yeah. And he tells some interesting stories the last time he was on about Shoresy. Yeah. But he back in his playing days, old Weapon X was a bad dude, man.
Scary dude.
Yeah.
Scary dude. Yeah. Extremely scary dude. With the mohawk, and I think he's got I don't remember. Is it a Pantera logo on the side of his head or something like that?
Yeah.
He was a scary dude. He was tough. He was a tough guy.
It was funny. I sent him a text and I told him that I was having you on. Yeah. And I said, well, I know you guys fought. And I said, do you have any stories of him? And he goes, no, not really. But I could tell you, he skated by and said something and thought there wouldn't be any repercussions. He was wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I remember I fought him. They were beating us or something. In the game was let's say 3-1 either way with 30 seconds left. So most times game's over with 30 seconds left, and the puck was in our zone, and our goal. I think it was Rapid City or Colorado.
Colorado.
One of the two.
Colorado.
Okay, yeah, Colorado, and they shot, and our goalie was going to save it. He made the save, and he was going to cover it, and I saw Alex is his first name, right? I saw Alex Fenner. I think of him as Weapon X. So I saw Weapon X skating to our goalie, and I was yelling at our goalie like, "Play the puck, play the puck, play the puck," because I know if he freezes it, Weapon X is going to like slash his hand, and it's going to cause not a mayhem, but he's going to do something where I'm going to have to do something. And I don't know if I wasn't yelling loud enough, but our goalie froze the puck, and just like I thought, Weapon X like slashed him, and then our defenseman goes to kind of tone that down, and Weapon X like punches him in the face, and then I was like, oh man, now I have to do something. And yeah, that's the backstory to that fight. I didn't want to fight him whatsoever at 3-1 in a game with 30 seconds left.
Yeah, especially it's like, can we just go home? I really don't want to fight Weapon X. Well, I don't really want to fight Weapon X tonight. Yeah.
I was already thinking about what I was going to have after dinner. Like, am I going to Ruby Tuesdays, or am I picking something up on the way home? Yeah. I wasn't thinking about fighting Weapon X, one of the toughest guys in the league, at all.
Well, like you said, you're bouncing around coaches here. The next year, you have David Bell was your coach, who is currently coaching the Senators in the American Hockey League.
Awesome coach. Awesome coach.
20 fights again this year, so you're cruising along. One of the guys that you played with was, a young guy. They traded him, but he was there. Tyler Sheldrake.
Oh yeah. He wasn't there long. He was a tough dude. I don't remember. We played together. It was like a month. He was there a month, 2 months, and then I think he went to maybe Tulsa or something like that.
Very good. Yes, it was Tulsa.
Yeah. There you go.
One of the guys that was on your team that was just sort of a funny little kind of fun fact. Obi Aduba. His and of course his sister played Crazy Eyes on the TV show Orange is the New Black.
Yeah. That I didn't even know. Obi's a super quiet guy until you really get to know him, and he's not going to say anything like that. But the only way I knew is I was watching Orange is the New Black, and I saw the credits, and the credits said Aduba, and then I went and that's her, and I'm like, oh my God, they look exactly alike, and I only knew that was his sister after throwing him a text and be like, hey Obi, is that your sister on the biggest Netflix show? And he's like, yep.
There you go. See, folks, where else are you going to get this type of information from? There you go. We dig deep here at the Fourth Line Voice. I have good connections to ask these questions.
I went to his wedding, a couple years after we played together, and obviously his sister was there. So I didn't say anything to his sister or anything like that, but it was pretty cool to see I don't know if you want to call her a superstar, but definitely somebody high up in the acting world.
Well, that was a big show at the time.
It was. I was surprised. It had I never really watched it after the first season, but it had like 4 or 5 seasons. I know that.
Yep. Well, this season here, I was asked about an incident that I have to ask you about. As apparently Eric Lizon came off the bench after you. Is that true?
Probably. Yeah.
I just like how I ask you something about a guy being pissed off at you, and it sort of runs together like, well, yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Chalk it up. The sky's blue.
Yeah.
He was tough. I don't remember the specific instance, but he was a menace just because he was super tough. And then their coach, Kevin McClellan, the old guy from the old tough guy with the Oilers. I think part of their dynasty in the 80s was he was there, and they just played off each other. And Kevin McClellan was a very, very vocal coach, let's just say, behind the bench. So it was, you knew you were in for one when you faced Kevin and Liza in Wichita. One
of the guys, and I had him on this show, and he's a very polarizing character, and the show got a lot of listens, and I had a lot of comments about this character. Yeah. He was a great guest, interesting guy, and you fought him was Joe Grimaldi.
Oh yeah, I didn't know you had Joe Grimaldi on the show. Yeah. I listen. I don't know Joe Grimaldi off the ice. I've heard stories, and he's tough to play, and I don't know it. I remember Joe Grimaldi, and I think now of him throwing his helmet at a guy on the ice, which is shocking. But I don't know Joe Grimaldi. I fought him once, so I don't know. I'm going to plead the fifth on Mr. Grimaldi.
You should listen to the interview. It's interesting. Tell some good stories, actually.
Okay. All right.
Another guy you seem to fight a lot.
He's definitely a character. I mean, he's definitely a character, and he's good. I hate sounding kind of like Switzerland, but he's a good player.
He's a really good player.
Play the game. That's for sure.
Yeah, he can
play the game, and he's a presence on the ice. He
was a high pick by the Islanders and stuff. Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah.
But another guy you seem to have a lot of run-ins with was it Craig Sescon? Yeah. No, Sescon. Yeah, another one like kind of like the Mark Cody was just always seemed to be running into each other. Always seemed to be pushing after the whistle. He was physical. I was physical. He didn't back down. I didn't back down. And it sounds crazy, but I like fighting Craig. I mean, we had good battles. He was an honest player. I respected the way he played. So yeah, I liked Greg Sescon. I found out I found out after I got done playing with him that he was a really good dude. So that, I don't know, that puts him high in my books. There you go. Another guy who was very large and Justin Sawyer.
Yeah, another guy that maybe not like the Weapon X Colt King tough, but he was a really tough guy too, and he could play a little bit. He always played a shift. So yeah. Very tough guy. I remember that.
You mentioned
he did like the Ice Warrior stuff too, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah, Ice Warriors in the first one. Yep.
Yeah.
He made it to the final. He ended up fighting a guy. Well, I think you fought him too in your final year. Of course, he went on to win the Ice Wars. Was Daniel Amesbury?
Oh yeah. He's a tough dude, and it's odd because like I remember when I fought him, I didn't really want to fight him but he stuck one of our teammates, or he elbowed one of our teammates, and it was he almost gave me no choice. So it's tough. I wasn't really going into the fight like I got super wanting to do it, but he's really tough. He is really, really tough, and I think I've seen him on social media here or there, but I think he really likes to do it, which makes him even tougher in a sense that, he likes the fighting aspect when some guys just do it because they're good at it or whatnot.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's crazy to think that he is now back playing in the East Coast League again.
It's nuts.
Yeah, we're talking about 2012, 2013 when you fought him, and here we are in 2025, and he's playing in Kansas City in the East Coast League. Yeah.
I know. I thought there was like a typo on his when I don't know why I came across his stats or something a while ago, and I was shocked at his age, and he took a break and he never really played a high level of junior hockey,
Yeah.
And not saying he's made it or anything, but he's come up by his bootstraps, which is very respectable in a sense. And he's a tough dude.
Well, it's amazing, yeah. 'Cause 7 years away from the game, had some issues there, and but back at it, and then Ice Wars really put him on the map, winning that, and then that really opened the doors for him, and he jumped into it wholeheartedly, and he's hit the ground, yeah, and I mean he's fully invested, and yeah, the dude loves to fight, and it's
he loves it. Yeah, there's no denying when you see, with social media that he loves to fight, and he's good at it too. So more power to him if he can be 35 years old at playing in the East Coast League for the first. I mean, maybe last year was his first year, but more power to him. That's a cool story.
Yeah, it's been interesting. A good guy, and had him on the show way back, and met him at Ice Wars a few times, and yeah, he's a good dude, and I'm nice guy, and I'm happy for him, and he's kind of he's living the minor league life that he didn't really get a chance to 10 years ago, right? Because of some problems, and then so now it's sort of like I'm doing it now because at some point the window's going to close here, and I got to get on with my life. But in the meantime, I'm going to do this as best I can. So. Yeah,
but he's not where it's like a side. I don't think he's to the point where it's like a sideshow. Like, oh, we're just going to bring this, guy that all he can do is fight. I don't know if he's much of a player. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. But he's got to be bringing something to the table other than fighting if he's going to stick around. East Coast League teams at this age.
Yeah, well, and I think with a lot of it, and I think especially now with the way hockey has changed, a lot of these young guys coming up, they didn't do what you did and what he did, like fighting 20 times in junior and all that. These guys might have like 5 fights, right? So I think they look at Amesbury, plus he's old, he's 30-some years old, and he's so intense with the training and everything. He's almost like having another coach, right? And I think he gets it. And I think he just makes these guys... Well, I think he gives them courage, right? Because he's there for them and whatever, right?
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah,
couldn't have said it better. He seems like he'd be a good teammate. He seems like he'd be a good dude in the room.
Yeah, a room guy, right? So, well, I've kept you here for a long time. We'll wrap up your final season, 2012-2013 in Quad City. Legendary coach, old Roscoe. Did you get along with Terry Ruskowski?
Yeah, Terry was good. I got along with Terry. He's a character.
He's been around forever.
He has been around forever. But the craziest thing about Terry, he's got a. I mean, if you look at his hockey DB, it's incredibly impressive. Like captain of the Blackhawks, played with Mario Lemieux, played with Gordie Howe in Houston, but he never cursed. So that was always the biggest thing. Like he'd be yelling at you and he'd say like "suckin" or "freaking." So that was super odd. But yeah, Terry was a good dude.
Well, like you were kind of alluded to it, like at this point, Quad City was kind of going through some transition. I mean, they're doing great now in the Southern League, but they were really, where's the money? They're having money issues. I mean, I know you guys played in like black jerseys for like the first 2 months, practice jerseys, and because they weren't ready.
It was sketchy there for a while. Like we didn't know if what would happen. I think the Central League that year came in and picked our tab up. So the Central League kept us afloat for that year, I think. So they were the owners of the Mountains. And then I think it got back after that year. But yeah, it was really touch and go with ownership groups and, pulling out of the league and whatnot.
Well, one of the guys that you played with, it was his last year, and he is now the coach of Quad City, Shane Toporowski. Get along with Topper?
Yeah, Topper was good. Yeah, I got along with Topper great. Loves hockey. Loves it. I could still remember him in the back of the bus. Like, you could tell he was going to be a coach. Like, he'd be the older guy in the bus, like having a 6-pack of Miller Lite or whatever and watching the NHL Network and talking about hockey. So I saw him being a coach from a mile away.
Yeah. At this point, you're 28 years old. Did you know this was going to be your last year? I
kind of felt it. Yeah. I kind of felt it where like the year was it was challenging in quad because of the off ice stuff, but then like it was tough to like, for me at least, I had to really get ready for the season. Like I had to really put a lot of effort and time into my training and being in shape. And I always prided myself on that. But at the end, that last summer, it was tough to do that. It was tough to like get on the ice before the season and kind of, fine tune the machine, so to speak. I was getting like little nicks and injuries that last year. And it was just like, I'm 28. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and it wasn't a, sad thing at all, but it was just, I felt before the year, like this is probably going to be my last one.
Yeah. Did you like, and, yeah, well, like you said, you had, 41 games that year. You went down swinging 9 fights. Your final fight of your career, you went buckets off March 15th, 2013. Do you remember who you fought?
Guy from Bloomington. I don't know his name. I know the team though.
You did very good. Daniel Barczyk.
Okay. Daniel Barczyk. I remember that was a good one. Stupidly, I felt good that was that was kind of the last fight of my career. It was in the last couple of games of the season, so I was like, that'd be nice if I ended my career on that fight. I'd be happy with that one.
It was a good one too.
Yeah.
Well, I got to ask you, because he brought your name up and we kind of laughed about it.
Yeah.
Colt King put the mouth to you in the interview when I had him on. What did you do to Colt King that got him that mad?
Oh, well, for one, I don't consider what Colt King said putting the mouth to me.
Well, you know what I'm saying. He was not happy with you anyway.
Oh, he was not happy with me at all, but it could have been a lot worse. I don't know. I always liked playing against Colt King. I always I thought he was a really good player. I mean,
he was.
The toughness that he has, that kind of speaks for itself. Anybody could go to YouTube and watch Colt King fights, and that's apparent that he's tough. But he could play the game, and I think that was very. I think people realize that, but that's a big part of his game as opposed to just being a fighter. Because he was I always consider Colt King more of a power forward.
Yep.
First.
Very good player.
That could, play the game, and he knows what the puck's for on the ice, and as opposed to just a pure slug meathead.
No, he's a really good player. Yeah, and tough dude. No, I was just wondering if there was like some incident that happened, like you did something to him, like I don't know, behind the play, you just spear him in the nuts behind the play, or what did you do?
I might have jabbed him in his leg or speared him, and put some snow in his skate, or said something to him. I don't remember that. a variety of reasons why he could hate me, or anybody else could dislike me.
Oh, tremendous. Well, there you go. 3 seasons of major junior and 9 years as a pro, and a lot of fights, and a bunch of teams played in different areas played around the world, went across the pond and played.
Yeah.
And, looking back, I mean, having regrets, I mean, there's no point now, but if you look back on your career, and is there anything, maybe like if you could go back and talk to young Jason, what would you have done anything different? What would you have done?
That's it's kind of pointless at this time, but change, I don't know, maybe worked a little more on my game, maybe worked a little more on my with the skills, with the puck. I mean, I was always a decent skater, so that wasn't an issue, but just little skills with the puck, being comfortable with the puck on my stick. That's really about it.
I was going to say, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought I did a lot right. You know what I mean? From a kid from St. Louis at our time, like that was pretty unheard of. Now St. Louis is producing awesome players, but I'm pretty overall, pretty happy with my, my work ethic in my career, but maybe just, got the hands a little smoother. That would have been nice.
Well, and I mean, it's true though. Like you said from back then, you and Jansen were kind of really trailblazers out of St. Louis at the time.
We are, and you know, Cam really set it off for St. Louis players to go to the NHL and to think and know that they have a future and they can if they, you know, want and they work hard. Cam was the perfect, almost like the trailblazer in a sense. And people think of, you know, myself or more him specifically, people think of him as just a tough guy, but that kid could skate. That kid was an athlete. That kid can move. So I think both of us coming from St. Louis at that time was more than anyone would have ever expected.
No, absolutely. Yeah, just looking back with all like the fights, the penalty minutes, and you know the antics and all that stuff. I know I kind of I asked you earlier, but you know, like I said, we're kind of doing a little career retrospect here as you look back. Yeah. Do you ever think maybe sometimes you got too wrapped up in being the rat?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there were sometimes where I'd have coaches be like, "Can you tone it down a little bit? Can you stop? Like, do you have to say something after every face-off or after every whistle?" I mean, my dad was awesome, but my dad would say that a couple times too. Like, you don't have to always be the rat. You don't always have to do that. You're kind of wasting your energy with being this rat role. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit. I could have toned it down, but if you look at the other side of the coin, if I didn't do that, maybe I wouldn't have been involved in the game or made myself as known. So always two sides, I guess, to every coin.
Well, that's interesting. I know I keep saying I should let you go, but you brought up some interesting thing. Did you ever exhaust yourself doing that, though? Do you think? Like just have you mentioned like with Willis, you're like, son of a bitch. He was always on all the time. I'm sure there was guys that say that freaking Kostadine, he's on all the time.
Yeah.
Did that become exhausting, especially as you got older?
Maybe not so much exhausting. Maybe not exhausting, but sometimes I wish I would have toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Been a little smarter about it, because sometimes I think when you're ratty and you're always running your mouth, guys maybe don't fear you as much because you're just a little rat. So they kind of not toss you to the side, but don't think as, you know, may not be as scared as if you were a little quieter.
Did you ever have a teammate tell you like, dude, enough, stop already?
Not to my face. They probably said that behind their backs, though. Like, this guy's a donkey.
Well, but it was like you're gonna get, like you were talking like how you ended up fighting Penner with no time left or whatever. Like, did you ever like put your team into like, you know, a minute left, all of a sudden we're having a line brawl because Kostadine decided to go two-hand anybody or anything?
Yeah, I tried not to do that. I try not to, you know, bring anybody else into my antics or have anybody else have to pay for my antics.
Yeah, well, because that's an interesting topic, because we actually brought that up on the Bruised and Battered show last week. There was a guy that kind of took he kind of they were up whatever, and he beat the defenseman and it had an empty net. Yeah. Well, instead of just putting it in, he decided, I'm going to take a slap shot. So he takes the slap shot in as he's looking back at him, and you know, and afterwards it starts kind of a line brawl. But of course, he kind of hightails it out of there, and he doesn't get involved. So we were just saying, like, I'm sure your teammates just loved getting punched in the face because you decided to be a goof. You know.
Yeah, we're digressing, but didn't that happen maybe 2 seasons ago with the kid from Ottawa? He did that.
And Morgan Riley cross-checked him in the head. Yeah.
Yeah, should have cross-checked him in the teeth. But yeah, exactly.
But it's like that, right? Where it's like, if you're going to act that way, I mean, you got to stand in if you're going to start the fire, you got to stand in the fire. You know. Yeah. You take a slap shot into an empty net on a team. There's probably going to be consequences to that. Yeah, and I was good. Like you said, did you ever find that maybe sometimes your antics led to, like maybe you were on, but the next shift out when you were sitting on the bench after doing goofy thing, all of a sudden your team, now there's a fight, and you're kind of like, oh shit, that's because of me.
I tried to be kind of smart about it. I mean, I wasn't completely picking my spots, but I tried to be smart and not, anything I did like a quote unquote rat wise, that was only to better myself or to better the team or something that I would try to do to give us an advantage. So I try to be cognizant of not, making somebody else pay for me being an idiot.
Well, and like I brought up every 19, 22, 19, 20 fights. I mean, it wasn't like you were running and hiding. I mean, you were standing there. You were standing there in it. So,
I know I got to pay the piper. I know if I do something, I got to answer for that.
Well, and there you go. And you came on here and you answered these questions, which I greatly appreciate it. And I've kept you here a long time, but I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate. I'll let you go, but thanks for going down memory lane with us and sharing some stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Thanks.
And you people that don't like fighting, how many of you did you walk out and get a coffee while that was on?